Look at him!
Pathetic.
In entitled Bullies Destroy Soldier Tomb, unaware a black guard is watching. The story begins with Marcus Cole, a decorated black veteran turned cemetery guard, quietly honoring fallen soldiers until privileged teens, led by Judge Thornton's arrogant son, desecrate the sacred grounds, sparking confrontation. Ch.123. When Marcus resists their taunts, the judge twists the truth, painting Marcus as the aggressor and rallying the town against him. Ch.426. But whispers grow, guilt cracks their lies, and a brave witness finally speaks out, exposing the corruption. Ch.728. As the community rallies behind Marcus, Thornton's courtroom authority shatters, his lies unravel, and poetic justice strips him of power, while his son falls from grace. Ch.9. In the quiet aftermath, Marcus returns to the graves, his dignity restored, reflecting that truth may be buried but it always rises again. Ch.10. The cemetery was quiet, the kind of quiet that carried weight. Marcus Reed walked the gravel path with slow, deliberate steps, his boots crunching in rhythm with his breathing. The cool night air brushed against his scarred knuckles. He scanned the rows of white stones, hundreds of them, perfectly aligned, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Each one carried a story, and he treated them like sacred scripture. He muttered to himself, voice low, "Marcus, rest easy bros, I'll keep watch." It wasn't just a job. For Marcus, being the cemetery guard was a duty of honor, his last post after years of service in uniform. Here, silence meant respect, and respect was all the fallen had left. The silence cracked. Laughter loud, drunken, careless, floated over the fence. Marcus stiffened. His eyes shifted toward the main gate, where a group of young men stumbled in, half shoving each other, half dragging beer bottles. Boy number one, slurring, "Man, I told you, shortcut through here, nobody cares." Boy number two, yeah, it's just a graveyard. What's gonna happen? The ghosts complain. Their laughter rang out again, jagged and out of place among the solemn rows of headstones. Marcus clenched his jaw but didn't move yet. He'd seen types like them before, entitled, reckless, convinced the world was theirs. As they came closer, the details sharpened. 5 of them, all early 20s, expensive jackets, slick hair, privileged ease in their body language. The ringleader, tall and broad-shouldered, carried himself with arrogant command. He barked jokes, and the others followed like dogs. Ringleader Chase, "Damn, look at this. Whole place lined up like dominoes. Bet half these names nobody even remembers." Boy number 3, except the janitor who has to clean up the bird crap. The group roared with laughter. Marcus inhaled through his nose, steadying himself. He'd learned restraint in war zones. Keep calm, watch, measure before you act. He stepped forward, boots loud enough on gravel to draw their eyes. "Marcus, evening gentlemen." The laughter faltered. For a second, they just stared at him. A tall black man, in a dark uniform, cap low, shoulders squared with soldier's posture. His presence alone carried weight. Marcus steady. "This is hallowed ground. I'm going to have to ask you to keep it quiet." A beat of silence, then Chase smirked. "Chase, oh, we got ourselves a babysitter, huh? Look at this guy, standing like he's about to salute." Boy number 2, snickering. "Grave cop, must be the easiest job in town." Boy number 3, "Nah man, he's probably here 'cause Walmart didn't hire." More laughter. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd been called worse in uniform, sometimes by men wearing the same flag. MarcusFirm.com. Show some respect. These stones mark soldiers who gave their lives. You'll keep it down, or you'll leave. They looked at each other, testing whether to push. Chase raised his beer bottle in mock salute. Chase mocking. "To the brave janitors of America. May their lawns always be mowed." The others broke into laughter again. One of them even clapped. Marcus's eyes narrowed. He took one step closer, his shadow stretching under the cemetery lights. "Marcus, this isn't a playground. You've had your laugh. Move on." For the first time, their laughter thinned. There was something in Marcus's tone, clipped, precise, the same voice that once barked orders and awards. Even drunk, they felt it. But arrogance dies hard. Boy number 1, "What's it to you, man? They're dead. Dead don't care." Marcus quiet, cutting. "Then, I'll care for them. You'll show respect." A hush fell for a moment. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird called. The wind shifted, cold. The tombs stood in perfect silence, as if listening. Chase broke the stillness with a grin that carried more cruelty than humor. Chase, tell me, officer, soldier, whatever you are, what happens if we don't? The others chuckled nervously, emboldened by his tone. Marcus studied their faces. Boys dressed as men, hiding behind wealth and confidence. He thought of the men he'd buried overseas, young too, but carrying courage these boys would never touch. Marcus measured, voice like steel. Then you'll regret it. Chase tilted his head, mock-surprised. Chase, oh, is that a threat? Marcus low. It's a promise. Silence again, the kind that presses against the chest. Marcus let it hang, let it weigh. He wasn't bluffing. His restraint was a dam holding back a river. Boy number 2 shifted uncomfortably, muttering under his breath. Boy number 2, man, maybe we should just Chase snapping. Shut up, he's just a guard, paid to stand here and look tough. Chase stepped forward, standing close enough for Marcus to smell the beer on his breath. He lowered his voice. Chase mocking whisper. What are you gonna do, soldier boy? Call the cops. My dad signs their paychecks. The others laughed louder at that, though some eyes darted nervously toward Marcus. Marcus didn't respond. He just held his ground, silent, unblinking. Years of discipline in his stance. Every inch of him radiating the message, not one more step. For the first time, Chase hesitated. His grin flickered. Marcus finally. Leave, now. The words carried no shout, no anger, just command. The kind that used to make young recruits snap to attention. But instead of obeying, Chase chuckled again, forcing bravado back onto his face. Chase, we're not done here, old man. This is just the warm-up. He turned to his friends, raising the bottle. Chase, come on boys, let's give these heroes something to roll over in their graves about. They cheered, reckless again, and moved deeper among the tombstones. Marcus stood still, fists clenched behind his back, the storm inside him beginning to build. He looked at the rows of stones, at the engraved names, at the silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. His voice, low, was for them alone. Bacchus whispering, stay with me, brothers. It's going to be a long night, *. The young men scattered among the graves like hyenas circling prey. Their laughter cracked against the quiet stones, jagged and cruel. Marcus followed, his boots crunching the gravel, the steady sound a contrast to their chaos. He felt his pulse tightening in his temples. They stopped before a grave that caught their attention. A headstone carved with the name, Private Elijah Daniels, a black soldier killed overseas. Fresh flowers lay at the base, their stems still damp from an afternoon visitor. Chase whistled, tilting his beer bottle toward the name. Chase, well, would you look at that? Elijah Daniels. Sounds like one of yours, huh? The others laughed, too loud for the sacred silence. Boy number 2. Betty signed up just to get out of the hood. Boy number 3. Nah man, you know the deal. Cannon fodder. Put the black guys up front, save the rest for later. Their laughter tore into Marcus like shrapnel. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through. Marcus sharp. Enough. They turned. Chase grinned, almost delighted by the resistance. Chase, what's wrong, soldier boy? Can't take a joke. Marcus, that's not a joke, that's a man's grave. He died wearing the same uniform I did. You'll shut your mouths and move on. For a moment, the air shifted. The boys glanced at each other, uneasy. Marcus's posture wasn't theatrical. It was lived-in authority, the kind bred in battlefields. But Chase thrived on performance. He wasn't backing down. Chase, mock salute. Private Elijah Daniels, sir. Reporting for janitorial duty. The boys howled with laughter. Chase exaggerated a clumsy march, tripping over his own boots as he staggered beside the grave. Boy number 1, cackling. Careful, Chase. Don't trip into the hole. They might bury you too. Marcus's hand twitched at his side. He pictured Elijah's face, though he'd never met him. A young man, uniform crisp, courage burning in his chest. He thought of folded flags handed to mothers, wives, children. Marcus low, seething. Show respect. Chase tilted his head, studying him. The grin stayed, but his eyes glinted, meaner now. Chase, respect. Respect's earned. And what do I see here? Dead men in the dirt and a washed-up guard babysitting them. Tell me, old man, did you fail so hard in life they gave you this gig? Boy number 3. Yeah, man. Imagine fighting in a war, just to end up picking trash off graves. The others laughed again, their voices echoing over the stones. Marcus inhaled sharply, his knuckles whitening as he restrained himself. He'd faced down insurgents with rifles. He could face spoiled boys with bottles. Marcus controlled. I don't answer to you, but you will answer for this if you don't leave. Chase chuckled, stepping closer. He looked Marcus up and down. Chase, answer to who? You think the cops are gonna roll up inside with you? Let me save you the trouble, soldier. My father's Judge Thornton. Maybe you've heard of him. Runs this town, which means... He leaned in, breath thick with beer, Chase whispering, you can't touch me. Marcus didn't flinch, his eyes locked on Chase's, steady and cold. Marcus low, firm, everyone answers to something. You just haven't met yours yet. The words landed heavier than the boys expected. A nervous silence hung in the air. One of them shuffled his feet, suddenly, uneasy under Marcus's gaze. Boy number 2 muttering, come on, Chase, maybe we should just... But Chase snapped around, barking. Chase, shut up. He doesn't scare me. He turned back to Marcus, lifting his bottle, and poured a splash of beer over Elijah Daniels's flowers. The petals darkened, soaking with the insult. Chase, mock solemn. A drink for the dearly departed. Cheers. The boys roared with laughter again, though some glanced nervously at Marcus. His silence was heavier than their noise. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over Chase. Marcus Steele, in his tone, pick those flowers back up. Chase smirked wider. Sensing the edge of Marcus's restraint, he leaned closer, taunting, Chase, make me. The standoff thickened. The night air grew colder. Even the wind seemed to pause. Marcus's heartbeat thundered, but his voice stayed calm. Marcus, last chance. Walk away. Boy number 1 snickering. Or what? You gonna shoot us? Don't see a gun. Soldier. Boy number 3. Yeah, he's all buck. Probably just waiting for retirement check. Their words burned, but Marcus didn't bite. He'd been trained for moments like this. Provocation, chaos, men trying to break his focus. He held steady. Chase finally broke the silence with a laugh, tossing his empty bottle onto the grass. Chase, boys, you hear that? Last chance. Guess we better behave before the ghost guard calls our daddies. The group exploded in laughter again. They shoved each other, emboldened by Chase's mockery. One of them mimicked Marcus's posture, chest puffed out, fake serious voice. Boy number 2 mocking, this is hallowed ground, you'll regret it. Boy number 3 snorting, damn, you sound just like him. The laughter rolled, but Marcus only stood taller. His silence was more intimidating than their noise. He let them perform, let them mock, because he knew laughter could only carry so far before it cracked, and he could see the cracks already forming. In their eyes, Marcus finally, slow and deliberate. You're standing on blood. Men better than you gave their lives, so you could waste yours. Keep laughing, but understand this. Every word you spit out here dishonors them. And dishonor doesn't go unpunished. The laughter faltered. Chase's grin slipped, just for a heartbeat, before he forced it back. Chase, mocking louder, to cover it. Punished by who? Huh? You don't make me laugh. But even as he said it, he looked away too quickly. Marcus turned his gaze back to Elijah's grave, to the flowers damp with beer. He bent down, lifted the soaked stems, and set them back carefully. His voice dropped to a whisper, not for the boys, but for the man beneath the stone. Marcus softly, I won't let them forget you, brother. The boys sneered. Chase spat near Marcus's boots, a final insult. Chase, pathetic. The group broke into laughter again. But it sounded thinner now, forced. They shoved each other further down the path, seeking new targets among the rows of graves. Marcus rose slowly, his hand brushing the dust from his knees. He watched them disappear deeper into the cemetery, his jaw locked tight. The anger inside him burned, steady as a furnace, waiting. He whispered again, voice low but certain. Marcus, they think the dead are silent, but the dead are never silent. The stones stood mute around him, but he felt their witness. Every step the boys took deeper into the cemetery was a step closer to the line Marcus would not allow them to cross, and he knew the night wasn't over. The boys wandered deeper among the stones, their laughter ricocheting through the cemetery. Marcus followed, steps steady but heavier now. Every crack of glass under their shoes sounded like an insult. One of them, tall, lean, his baseball cap turned backward, stumbled against a grave. He looked down, sneered, and kicked over a bouquet of fresh roses. The petals scattered across the dirt. Boy number 1. Oops, guess the dead won't mind. The group howled. Marcus's voice thundered, sharper than before. Marcus, pick that up now. They turned, startled at the power in his tone, but Chase only smirked. Chase, man, you really love your flowers, huh? Maybe you missed your calling. Should have been a gardener instead of a soldier. Marcus firm. That was placed by a family, a mother, maybe. Show some respect. Boy number 2, mocking gasp. Respect. You hear that, Chase? Daddy guard wants us to respect the dirt. The laughter grated, but Marcus held steady. He stepped closer, planting himself between the grave and the boys. His shadow fell across them. Marcus, you've crossed the line. Leave. Chase cocked his head, grinning wider. Chase or what? The air thickened. Marcus's fists tightened at his sides, veins rising against scarred skin. He didn't want violence. Not here, not in front of the dead. But the line had been crossed. Marcus measured. Low, or you'll answer to me. For a moment, silence hung. Then boy number 1 gave a shove. Boy number 1, move, old man. Marcus staggered half a step, but planted his boots again, unmoved. His eyes burned into the boy's face. Marcus cold. You just made a mistake. The boy scoffed, turning to his friends for approval. Chase slapped his shoulder like a coach egging on a player. Chase, that's right. Show him who's boss. Another boy, younger looking, pulled out his phone. The blue glow lit his smirk. Boy number 3, this is gold. Nobody's gonna believe this unless we film it. He lifted the phone higher, recording Marcus's expression, circling him like a predator with a toy. Boy number 3, mocking. Say cheese. Soldier boy, let's see that war face. Marcus's voice dropped to a low rumble. Marcus, turn that off. But the boy only laughed harder. Boy number 3, or what? You afraid the world all see you lose your temper? The others cackled, chanting mockingly. Boy number 2, do it, man. Scare him. Show us your PTSD eyes. Chase roaring with laughter. Yeah, give us that 1,000-yard stare. The laughter echoed, sharp and cruel. Marcus's jaw flexed. He remembered nights overseas, mortar lighting the desert sky, brothers falling beside him. The same voices had mocked him when he came home. Angry vet, unstable, crazy. He stepped closer, his voice like a command issued in combat. Marcus's turn, that off. The boy hesitated, but Chase slapped the phone playfully. Chase, keep filming. If he touches you, that's assault. And guess who's got the law on his side? Marcus's stomach tightened. He knew the truth in those words. Too many stories of guards, veterans, black men accused when they stood their ground. Still, he didn't step back. His silence unnerved them more than shouting ever could. Chase finally pushed the boundary further. He swaggered forward, knocking over another flower arrangement with his boot. He leaned close enough for Marcus to smell the liquor on his breath. Chase taunting. You're nothing. A failed soldier babysitting dead ones. Nobody's gonna remember you, just like nobody remembers them. Marcus's blood boiled, but his voice stayed calm. Marcus low-cutting. I remember them. That's enough. Chase smirked wider, tapping his chest with mock pride. Chase, see, that's the difference. My name's going to be remembered. Chase Thornton, son of Judge Thornton. People already know me. People already fear me. Who fears you? The words hung sharp in the cold air. Marcus felt the stones at his back, silent witnesses. His restraint stretched thin. Boy number 1 shoved him again. Harder this time. Boy number 1, mocking. Move aside. Gravijanito. Marcus's boots slid in the gravel, but he didn't fall. He straightened, slow and deliberate. His eyes locked onto the boy's, unblinking. Marcus, quiet steel. Touch me again, and you'll regret it. The words were simple, but they cut deeper than a shout. Even the drunken boys felt the weight. Chase clapped his hands once, laughing too loudly. Chase, there it is. There's the fight. You hear that? Boys, the dogs growling. Boy number 2, mock growl. Woof woof. They all laughed, barking like dogs. The sound bounced grotesquely against the marble stones. Marcus's chest heaved, not from fear but from restraint. He thought of folded flags, mothers in black, the salutes at graveside services. He thought of why he took this job, to guard silence, to guard dignity. And these boys were shredding both. He lifted his chin slightly, speaking with soldier's authority. Marcus, desecrating graves is a crime. You'll walk out of here, or you'll answer for every flower you've stomped. The boy with the phone laughed harder, zooming in. Boy number 3, oh, we're in trouble now. Somebody call the FBI. The camera caught Marcus's glare, his lips pressed tight. He knew they'd twist the footage, make him the aggressor. But he also knew this wasn't random mischief. This was privilege flexing its muscles, daring him to break. Chase leaned back, stretching his arms wide. Chase, try and stop us. Soldier boy. The challenge rang out like a starting gun. Marcus's fists clenched. The storm inside his chest surged, pressing against the dam of his discipline. He looked around at the stones, rows upon rows, silent witnesses. He whispered under his breath, so low the boys couldn't hear. Marcus to himself, not yet. The night air grew colder, sharper, as if the cemetery itself braced for what was coming. Asterisk. The boys spread out like vultures, weaving between the rows of white stones. Their laughter shattered the night's stillness, bouncing cruelly off the marble. Marcus followed, a shadow at their backs, his boots steady against the gravel. One of them smashed his empty beer bottle against a headstone. The glass scattered across the grass, glittering like shards of broken honor. Boy number 2 cackling. Oops, hope they got insurance down here. Another unzipped, shameless. Boy number 1. Been holding this in all night. Time to water the flowers. Marcus's jaw tightened. He stepped forward sharply, his voice commanding. Marcus, enough. The word cracked like thunder. The boys froze for a heartbeat. Startled, Chase turned, smirk creeping back onto his lips. Chase mocking. Damn, look at that. Soldier boy found his voice. He raised his arms, spinning theatrically among the stones. Chase, mock shout, attention. The guard dogs barking. Better fall in line. The others erupted in laughter. But Marcus didn't waver. His eyes blazed with the same authority that once cut through battlefield chaos. Marcus firm, unwavering. Put your bottles down, zip up, and get out. His voice rolled like a command drill, and for the first time, the boys hesitated. The weight of it pressed against them, a presence they hadn't expected. Boy number 3 muttered, nervous. Boy number 3, man, I don't like this. He's serious. But Chase wasn't ready to yield. He stepped closer, staring Marcus down, testing the ground between them. Chase snide. What are you gonna do, huh? Call the cops. Let me tell you something, soldier boy. You think they'll listen to you over me? Marcus didn't blink. Marcus, desecrating graves is a felony. That's not a warning. That's the law. Chase mock gasp. Oh no, the law. Somebody save us. The boys laughed again, but it rang thinner now, uneasy. Chase shoved Marcus's shoulder hard, as if daring him. Chase, you don't scare me. Marcus didn't move back. His boots stayed planted, his shoulders squared. Marcus low, steel in his tone. I don't need to scare you. I need to stop you. The air cracked. Chase's smirk faltered, just for a breath. He covered it with louder laughter. Chase, stop us. You, one washed-up guard against all of us. Boy number 1 stepped forward, puffing his chest. Boy number 1, we'll stomp you flat, old man. Marcus's hands trembled at his sides. He'd been shoved, mocked, spat on. Every insult cut deeper because it wasn't just about him. It was about the men in the ground. Brothers who'd taken bullets beside him. Families who cried at folded flags. He felt them watching now. The silence of the stones was heavier than the boys' noise. Marcus lifted his chin, his voice cutting sharp. Marcus, you dishonor men braver than you'll ever be. Boy number 2 spat near his boots. Boy number 2, braver. They're dead. Guess bravery don't count for much. Marcus's restraint cracked. He stepped forward, close enough that Chase had to tilt his head back to meet his eyes. Marcus commanding, voice like a drill sergeant. I said, leave. The force of it silenced them for the first time all night. Even Chase's grin faltered, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. For a moment, they saw it, the soldier beneath the uniform, the man who had once commanded respect in the chaos of war, the voice that made boys into men, that cut through mortar, fire, and fear. Boy number 3 whispered, uneasy. Boy number 3, Chase, maybe we should go. But Chase's pride burned hotter than his fear. He recovered with a sneer, shoving Marcus again. Harder. Chase, make us. Marcus staggered half a step back, his boots grinding against the gravel, his fists clenched, breath steadying. He reached for his radio at his belt, thumb hovering over the button. The thought burned, call for backup, but he knew the truth. Small-town cops, friends of Judge Thornton, they wouldn't side with him. They'd twist it. They'd say he provoked it. He lowered his hand slowly, leaving the radio untouched. His eyes locked onto Chase. Marcus low, searing. You want to test me. You're playing a dangerous game. Chase smirked wider, sensing his friend's eyes on him. He couldn't back down now, not in front of them. He shoved Marcus again, grinning. Chase, danger's my middle name. The others laughed nervously, unsure now whether to cheer or hold back. Marcus stood still, chest rising and falling. Inside, Discipline and fury battled like fire against steel. He thought of every lesson drilled into him: control, restraint, precision. But he also thought of the men who lay beneath the ground, their silence, begging for justice. The storm inside his chest surged. His restraint was bending, cracking. Chase leaned in, lips curling into a cruel smile. Chase taunting. "What's the matter, old man? Afraid to hit me? Afraid of what Daddy Judge might do to you?" Marcus's jaw clenched. His silence was answer enough. Boy number one, egging on. "Yeah, hit him, old man. Let's see what you got left." Boy number two, snickering. "Bet he can't even throw a punch anymore." Their voices circled him like hyenas. Chase shoved again, pushing harder this time. Marcus's boots slid, his body swaying. His chest heaved once, twice. Then, in a voice quiet but sharp as a blade, he answered, "Marcus, I won't let you disgrace them." The words weren't loud, but they cut deeper than any shout. Chase sneered, but for the first time, his grin twitched. The silence of the cemetery pressed closer. The stones seemed to watch. Even the wind died down, leaving only the sound of ragged laughter and Marcus's steady breathing. The dam was breaking. The shove nearly toppled Marcus backward. His boots caught on the gravel, his heel scraping against the edge of a headstone. For one sharp second, he thought he might fall into the marble, crash into the name of a soldier he once knew. That thought snapped something inside him. Marcus straightened, slow and steady, the muscles in his neck tight as iron. Marcus low. "Growl, you crossed the line." Chase smirked, ready with another insult, but Marcus moved first. With the speed of a man who'd drilled 1,000 times under fire, Marcus's hand shot out and clamped Chase's wrist. The boy's smug grin evaporated as Marcus twisted, forcing him down with the precision of a combat hold. Chase panicked. "Ah, let go. Get off me." The other boys froze, eyes wide. They'd expected Marcus to bark, maybe shove back. They hadn't expected this trained efficiency. Sudden and controlled. Marcus through clenched teeth. "You want to desecrate their graves? You do it on your knees." He forced Chase down, the boy's face inches from the dirt. Chase thrashed, but Marcus's grip was unshakable. Boy number one yelling, "Hey, get off him." Boy number two uncertain. "Man, I told you this was a bad idea." They rushed forward. Marcus released Chase, only to pivot, standing tall again. Boy number one swung wild, a clumsy arc of adrenaline and fear. Marcus sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and shoved him hard into a headstone. The boy's breath whooshed out as he crumpled to the ground. The sound echoed through the cemetery like a gunshot. Marcus, snapping, command voice, "Enough." For a moment, they hesitated. For boys, full of youth and arrogance, but now faced with a man who moved with the precision of lived combat, Chase scrambled up, fury blotching his cheeks red. Chase spitting, "You're dead, you hear me?" Dead. He lunged. Marcus caught him mid-charge, shoving him back with a forearm to the chest. Chase staggered, wheezing. Marcus breath steady, voice shaking with emotion. "I buried friends who died for this flag. Men better than you. You will not shame them tonight." Boy number two picked up a shard of glass from the broken bottle, brandishing it like a weapon. His hands trembled. Boy number two snarling, scared, "We'll cut you, old man." Marcus didn't flinch. His voice dropped lower, colder. "Marcus, then you better pray you finish the job, because if you don't, I will put you in the dirt beside them." The words weren't shouted, but they landed like steel. The boy faltered, the glass shaking in his grip. He dropped it to the ground with a clatter. Boy number three pleading, "Chase, man, stop this. He's not playing." But Chase's pride was louder than reason. He charged again, fists flailing, screaming curses. Marcus blocked, ducked, and delivered a single, sharp punch to his gut. Chase folded, gasping for air, collapsing to his knees. Silence rippled across the group. The boys stared, wide-eyed, their leader wheezing on the ground. Marcus stood over him, chest heaving, sweat glistening on his brow. His fists trembled, not from fear, but from the war inside him. Marco's hoarse, raw. "This is sacred ground. You don't spit here. You don't piss here. You don't touch these stones, ever." The boys didn't answer. Their bravado had drained, leaving only the heavy weight of shame and fear. Marcus's gaze swept over them, eyes burning. Marcus quieter, voice breaking slightly. "Every name here belongs to a man who gave more than you can imagine. Men who never came home. And I'll be damned if I let children drunk on entitlement disgrace them." For the first time, none of the boys laughed. Boy number three shuffled back, his voice shaking. Boy number three, let's just go, He's crazy." Chase coughed, clutching his stomach, but even he couldn't rise to meet Marcus's eyes. His arrogance had cracked into something else, fear mixed with humiliation. The group began to retreat, shuffling toward the edge of the cemetery. Marcus stood tall, breathing heavy, watching every step. But as they reached the gate, Chase spun back, his pride still bleeding, Chase spitting, voice ragged. "This isn't over. My dad's the judge. You're finished, old man." The words echoed, venomous and cowardly, as the boys disappeared into the night. Marcus's fists loosened slowly. He exhaled, long and trembling, the rage draining from his body. His shoulders sagged. He turned back toward the headstones, scanning the rows of silent markers. The night had returned to stillness, but it was no longer quiet. His ears still rang with their laughter, their insults, their disrespect. He dropped to one knee before the nearest grave, bowing his head. Marcus softly, almost a prayer, "Forgive me. I should have held back, but I couldn't let them. Not here." The marble stood silent, but the weight of it felt like judgment and comfort all at once. Above him, the wind finally stirred again, brushing through the trees, as if the earth itself exhaled. Marcus clenched his jaw, eyes wet but unbroken. Marcus whispered, "Vow, this isn't over. They'll answer for it, all of it." And with that, he rose from his knees, standing once more as a soldier among the fallen. By morning, the cemetery felt like another battlefield. The graves still stood in silent rows. But Marcus's mind replayed the night over and over, the laughter, the shove, the punch that landed harder than he meant. He hadn't slept. His body was still wired with adrenaline, his conscience torn between pride and dread. At dawn, the squad car arrived. Blue and red lights cut across the headstones. 2 officers stepped out, their expressions already set, cold, unreadable. Officer 1 flat. "Marcus Reed." Marcus steady, though tired. "That's me." "Officer 2, you're under arrest." The words landed like a slap. Marcus frowning. "For what?" "Officer 1, assault, battery, against minors." Marcus's breath caught. "Marcus, they were drunk, desecrating graves. I was protecting this ground." The officer didn't blink. "Officer 2, tell it to the judge." The cuffs clicked cold against his wrists. At the station, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and paperwork. Marcus sat in the hard chair, his wrists still bound. Across the desk sat Sheriff Hall, a man who'd known him for years, yet wore a look of practiced indifference. "Marcus Hall, you know me. You know what those kids were doing out there." Sheriff Hall shrugging. "I know Judge Thornton's boy came in this morning with bruises and a story. Said you jumped him unprovoked." Marcus's jaw clenched. Marcus unprovoked. He was pissing on a soldier's grave. Hall leaned back, folding his arms. Sheriff Hall, "Marcus, listen. You laid hands on them. You knocked the judge's kid down. That's all anyone upstairs is gonna care about." The truth pressed against Marcus's ribs like a weight. He had fought wars overseas, carried brothers bleeding through sand and mud. But here, at home, truth was already losing ground. Marcus low, furious. "So their word counts. Mine doesn't." Sheriff Hall quiet, avoiding his eyes. "You know how it is." By afternoon, the whispers had spread through town. At the diner, people spoke in hushed tones. "Did you hear? The cemetery guard attacked the judge's boy." At the courthouse steps, heads turned when Marcus was led inside, still cuffed. In the hearing room, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Judge Thornton himself sat at the bench, his robes crisp, his gavel heavy. Chase sat in the front row, bruised but smirking, his friends nodding solemnly beside him. Their story had already been rehearsed. Marcus stood tall, unflinching, though every eye in the room bore into him. Judge Thornton icy. "Mr. Reed, you are accused of violently assaulting my son and his companions last night. How do you plead?" The question was venom wrapped in civility. Marcus steady, "Not guilty. I was protecting sacred ground from being desecrated." Chase chuckled under his breath. His father didn't so much as glance at him. Judge Thornton, voice sharp. "So you expect us to believe that 4 unarmed boys attacked you, and you, trained soldier, were simply defending graves?" Marcus's hands tightened at his sides. Marcus's hoarse, controlled, "I expect you to believe the truth." The judge's gavel cracked against the wood. "Judge Thornton, enough. Your truth, Mr. Reed, does not excuse violence, especially against children." "Children?" Marcus nearly laughed at the word, but it caught in his throat like broken glass. Marcus under his breath. "Children don't desecrate the dead." The courtroom stirred. Thornton's eyes narrowed. Judge Thornton cold. You will hold your tongue, or I will hold you in contempt. The trial wasn't a trial at all. It was a stage. Chase's friends testified, their voices dripping with practiced fear. Boy number 1, on stand. Eyes wide. He grabbed Chase out of nowhere, started shouting, throwing punches. Boy number 2, solemn, shaking his head. We begged him to stop. He wouldn't listen. Marcus's jaw worked, his silence screaming louder than any words. When it was his turn to speak, his statement felt like shouting into a storm. Marcus, they broke bottles on the stones. They spat on graves. They laughed while dishonoring the men buried there. I told them to leave. They shoved me. I restrained them, that's all. But every word was swallowed whole by the gavel and the whispers. Thornton's verdict came fast. Judge Thornton, until further review, Mr. Reed is suspended from duty. A fine will be imposed, pending a deeper inquiry. You are ordered not to come within 50 feet of my son or his friends. Chase smirked openly now, leaning back in his seat like a victor. Marcus's chest burned. He wanted to roar, to shout the truth until the walls cracked, but the judge's gaze pinned him down like a knife. When the gavel fell, it was not justice, it was power. Outside the courthouse, Marcus stood alone on the steps. The townsfolk passed him in silence, some shaking their heads, others avoiding his eyes. The humiliation pressed down heavier than the cuffs had. For the first time in years, Marcus felt smaller than he had on any battlefield. He was a soldier again, but this time, the war was home, and the enemy wore robes, not uniforms. He clenched his fists, staring back at the courthouse doors. Marcus, quiet vow. You may twist the story, Judge, but the truth doesn't stay buried, not forever. The suspension hit Marcus harder than the fine. For years, the cemetery had been his post, his duty, his way of serving long after the battlefield. Now, stripped of that role, he walked the town like a man exiled. People whispered when he passed. Some looked away, others muttered judgment under their breath, but not everyone. Some lingered, curious. A few frowned at the official story. At the diner counter, waitress Mary Lou poured him black coffee without asking. Mary Lou, low voice. Don't listen to M. Folks here know those boys, know how they act. Marcus quiet, tired. Knowing's not the same as speaking. Mary Lou sighs. Give it time. Truth's got a way of slipping out. Marcus nodded, but his jaw was tight. Time had never been a friend of justice. Across town, in the Thornton household, Chase basked in his father's protection. The bruises on his face had already turned to bragging rights. Chase, 2 friends, smirking. Told you, old man's done. Dad said he won't see daylight outside fines and shame. The boys laughed, but not all of them with the same ease. Boy number 3, Evan, shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't slept well. The image of Marcus forcing Chase down, not with cruelty, but with control, haunted him. Later, alone with his mother, Evan finally cracked. Evan hesitant. Mom, what if the guard wasn't wrong? What if Chase started it? Mrs. White startled. Evan, don't you repeat that, not to anyone. Judge Thornton won't stand for it. Evan, voice breaking, but he was protecting the graves. We were. She gripped his arm, eyes wide with fear, not anger. Mrs. White, urgent whisper. Do you want to ruin us? The judge can bury families, not just men. Keep quiet. Evan nodded, but his chest ached. Silence felt heavier than truth. Meanwhile, Marcus visited the cemetery at night, despite the suspension. No uniform, no authority, just a man walking among the stones. He knelt by a grave, running his hand over the name carved there. Marcus whisper. They've painted me as a villain, brother, but I swear, I'll guard you still. The air was cold, but something in it steadied him. The cracks widened days later at the hardware store. Chase strutted in with his entourage, loud and careless. Chase boasting. Guy went down like a sack of bricks, begged me to stop hitting him. You should have seen it. The clerk frowned. He had heard the courtroom version that Marcus had been the aggressor. This didn't match. He glanced at another customer, who also raised a brow. Whispers began to spread, not all at once, but like smoke slipping under doors. The story was shifting. Sheriff Hall wasn't deaf to it either. He called Marcus in, not out of friendship, but out of discomfort. Sheriff Hall gruff. You're stirring things up. Marcus flat. I've done nothing but breathe. Sheriff Hall. Some folks think maybe Thornton's boy wasn't as innocent as he made out. Marcus met his eyes, steady, unflinching. Marcus, because he wasn't. You know it. You always knew it. Hall didn't answer. but the silence was telling. The turning point came when Mary Lou overheard Evan arguing with his friends outside the diner. His voice cracked, but it carried Evan angry, near tears. I can't keep lying. He didn't hit us first. We shelved him. We laughed at the graves. He was just doing his job. The others hissed at him to shut up, but the damage was done. Two old men on the diner's porch heard every word. By evening, the whole town buzzed with it. Marcus sat at home, the weight of disgrace still heavy, when a knock sounded at his door. It was Mary Lou, her face flushed from excitement. Mary Lou grinning, breathless. They're talking. Marcus, the truth's slipping out. Evan cracked wide open. Folks are listening now. Marcus blinked, stunned. He leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion and hope colliding in his chest. Marcus soft, almost to himself, cracks in the stone. Mary Lou, what? Marcus louder, steady, truths breaking through. That night, for the first time since the attack, Marcus slept without dreams. By the time Sunday came, the town was buzzing, not with hymns or sermons, but with rumors. At the diner, the talk wasn't hushed anymore. At the barber shop, old men shook their heads. At church, whispers carried between pews. The story was cracking open. Evan White had said too much to be ignored. Mary Lou leaned over Marcus's booth at the diner, her voice low but fierce. Mary Lou, it's spreading faster than wildfire. Folks are saying you didn't start it, that you were defending the graves. Marcus tired, cautious. Rumors don't stand against judges. Mary Lou, maybe not, but they stand against lies. At the Thornton home, the pressure boiled. Judge Thornton slammed his fist against the dining table, silverware clattering. Judge Thornton furious. You let them see weakness. You let that old man turn this on us. Chase defensive. I didn't. Evans the one running his mouth. Judge Thornton cold, sharp, then shut him up. Do you understand me? Chase nodded, but his eyes flickered with unease. For the first time, his father's fury frightened him more than Marcus ever had. The shift came when Evan's guilt outgrew his fear. One evening, he walked into the sheriff's office, alone. Sheriff Hall looked up, surprised. Sheriff Hall, Evan, what are you doing here? Evan voice shaking. I need to tell the truth about the cemetery. Hall leaned back, studying him. Sheriff Hall careful. You realize what that means. Thornton won't forgive it. Evan swallowing hard. I don't care. It's eating me alive. And so the boy spoke. He told of the beer bottles smashed against marble, the laughter, the piss-staining sacred ground. He told of Chase, shoving Marcus, mocking him, daring him. He told of the moment Marcus restrained, not attacked, the judge's son. Hall listened in silence. For once, his indifference cracked. Sheriff Hall quiet. Son, you just started a war. The confession couldn't stay buried. Hall wasn't brave enough to confront Thornton directly. But word slipped to the clerk, to the reverend, to the veterans post. By nightfall, the whole town knew Evan had flipped out at the VFW hall. Veterans who had once served alongside Marcus stood tall, their voices rising. Veteran 1, that man bled for this country. And you're telling me he's the villain? Veteran 2, Thornton's boy, spat on our brothers' graves. That's the crime. The old guard of the town, men who carried scars, who buried friends, began to side with Marcus, loud and public. When Marcus walked into the grocery store the next day, the air felt different. Eyes still followed him, but not with the same judgment. A few nodded. One woman touched his arm gently. Woman softly, I believe you. The weight he'd carried began to shift, just slightly. The real break came at the town council meeting. Judge Thornton sat tall, robes pristine, his son smirking in the front row. He spoke of respect for the law and the dangers of rogue behavior. But then, from the back, a voice cut through. Evan clear, trembling but strong. He's lying. The room froze. Evan stepped forward, pale but resolute. His mother tried to hush him, but he shook her off. Evan louder. We were drunk. We broke bottles on the graves. Chase shoved him. He told us to leave. That's all he did. He didn't attack us. We attacked him. The room erupted. Murmurs, gasps, heads turning. Thornton's face darkened, his gavel hammering furiously. Judge Thornton roaring. Silence. This boy is confused, misled, but the tide had shifted. Other whispers rose, people who had overheard Chase bragging at the hardware store, veterans who stood with Marcus, townsfolk who were no longer afraid to connect the dots. Mary Lou stood, her voice ringing clear. Mary Lou, we all know what's been happening. You protected your son and tried to bury the truth, but the truth doesn't stay buried. Judge. The room thundered with agreement. Thornton slammed the gavel again, but the sound no longer commanded the room. For the first time, power slipped from his grasp. Marcus sat quietly near the back, his face calm but his chest pounding. For weeks, his name had been dragged through the mud. Tonight, the tide was turning. That night, Marcus returned to the cemetery in uniform, even though the suspension hadn't been lifted. He stood among the graves, the moon casting silver over white stone. Marcus soft, almost prayerful. They tried to silence the truth, but it found its way out. Just like you always told me it would, the wind whispered through the trees. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt the ground beneath him steady, firm. The fight wasn't over, but exposure had cracked the mask wide open. The courthouse had never been so full. Farmers in worn boots, veterans with polished pins, churchwomen with hats angled high. The whole town seemed to have crammed into the gallery. The air was heavy, not with reverence for law, but with something sharper, expectation. Marcus sat quietly in the back, his uniform pressed, his eyes steady. Suspended or not, he carried himself like the soldier he was. Mary Lou sat beside him, her chin high. At the front, Judge Thornton adjusted his robes with deliberate calm, but his jaw ticked. Chase sat nearby, smirking faintly, though his leg bounced under the table. Sheriff Hall cleared his throat as he opened proceedings, his voice betraying unease. Sheriff Hall, we are here to discuss the events at Greenwood Cemetery and the conduct of guard Marcus Cole. The murmurs rose, but then Evan White stood again. His face was pale, but his voice was stronger this time. Evan, Marcus didn't disgrace the cemetery. We did. Chase did. Thornton slammed the gavel, Judge Thornton roaring. This is out of order. You will not. But Evan kept speaking, louder, shaking but unyielding. Evan, we laughed while we broke bottles over soldiers' graves. We spat on the tombstones. Chase shoved him. Marcus never struck back. He told us to leave. That's all. The gallery erupted. Veteran in crowd. Enough lies. Judge. Another voice. We saw Chase bragging about it at the station. Mary Lou firm, cutting. You've hidden behind that robe long enough. Thornton's face turned red, veins straining at his temples. Judge Thornton snapping. Silence. Or I'll hold you all in contempt. But his words rang hollow. Even Sheriff Hall didn't move to back him. Instead, the sheriff cleared his throat and, for the first time, addressed the judge directly. Sheriff Hall, quiet, heavy. Your Honor, too many stories line up, too many witnesses. Maybe this isn't Marcus on trial anymore. The room fell silent. Thornton's hands shook on the bench. He tried to muster his old thunder, but the crowd wasn't listening. The breaking point came when a decorated veteran, Sergeant Alvarez, stood. He walked with a limp, his medals gleaming against his chest. Sergeant Alvarez voiced sharp. Marcus Cole carried brothers of mine through fire. He stood guard while we slept. If you think a man like that desecrates graves, you're spitting on every soldier who ever wore this uniform. The only disgrace here is how your boy treated the dead. The gallery thundered. With applause and stomping feet, Thornton pounded the gavel, but no one stopped. His authority dissolved before his eyes. Chase's smirk cracked. He tugged at his collar, eyes darting. Chase low, desperate. Dad, maybe we should. Judge Thornton snarling. Shut your mouth. The words echoed too loud, too sharp. The crowd went quiet, watching father and son fracture under the weight of their own arrogance. Then came the final blow. A clerk, pale and nervous, rose from the side bench. Clerk, Judge, I overheard you telling the sheriff to bury the reports. I heard you say Marcus needed to be made an example. A gasp rippled through the room. Thornton's face drained of color. Judge Thornton stammering. That's a lie. A fabrication. But the silence said otherwise. Every mask had cracked. Every shield had fallen. Sheriff Hall, sweat glistening on his brow, finally found his spine. Sheriff Hall, Judge Thornton, I'm placing you under investigation for obstruction of justice and misconduct. The gallery exploded. Cheers, gasps, shouts. Thornton slammed his fists against the bench. Judge Thornton screaming, you fools, do you know who I am? I am the law in this town. Mary Lou rose slowly, her voice calm but slicing like a blade. Mary Lou, no, you were the law. The truth just caught up to you. As deputies moved hesitantly toward the bench, Thornton's face contorted rage, fear, disbelief. Chase sat frozen, sweat pouring, his cocky grin erased forever. Thornton's robe, once a symbol of untouchable power, now hung heavy. A costume of a man exposed. For the first time, Marcus stood. He walked to the aisle, his eyes never leaving the disgraced judge. Marcus quiet, steady. You tried to break me, but you only broke yourself. The crowd roared its approval. Veterans clapped, townsfolk stood, and Evan wept openly. Thornton was led away, his shouts swallowed by the sound of a community rising. That night, Marcus returned to the cemetery. The graves stood silent, moonlight gleaming on marble. He knelt by the soldier's tomb, laying a hand gently on the stone. Marcus softly. Justice wasn't blind tonight. She finally opened her eyes. The wind stirred through the trees, carrying the weight of vindication. For the first time in weeks, Marcus stood unburdened. The judge had fallen. The dead had been honored, and dignity, though battered, had survived. The town felt different in the days that followed. Not all at once. Prejudice didn't vanish overnight, but something had shifted. The whispers that once cut Marcus down now carried a different edge. Respect, shame, even apology. At the diner, Mary Lou poured him coffee without charging, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. Mary Lou softly told you, Marcus, truth don't stay buried. He gave her a tired smile, the kind that carried both gratitude and sorrow. The courthouse, stripped of its tyrant, looked smaller somehow. Judge Thornton's name was already being pried from plaques. Chase, red-eyed and silent, avoided the streets. His swagger evaporated. At the VFW hall, veterans raised a toast in Marcus's honor. Veteran to the guard who stood when it counted. Glasses clinked, but Marcus's eyes drifted elsewhere, to the names carved in marble at Greenwood. One evening, he returned to the cemetery in full uniform, though his reinstatement papers hadn't yet arrived. The sunset stretched long shadows across the rows of graves, golden light catching on etched stone. He walked slowly between them, boots crunching on gravel, until he reached the soldier's tomb, the one where it had all begun. Kneeling, he brushed dust from the base of the marker. Marcus, quietly, almost prayerful. They tried to turn me into the criminal, but you knew better. You saw. The silence of the cemetery answered him, but in it there was peace. Later, Evan came, hands stuffed in his pockets, shame heavy in his eyes. He stopped a few feet back, unsure if he had the right to approach. Evan hesitant. I don't expect forgiveness, but I couldn't keep lying. Marcus studied him, then nodded once. Marcus measured. Calm. It took courage to tell the truth. That's more than most men ever do. Evan's shoulders sagged in relief. He left without another word, but his head was higher. As the sun dipped and stars crept in, Marcus stood tall among the graves. His reputation had been dragged through the mud, his dignity tested, his loyalty questioned. Yet in the end, it wasn't the robe or the gavel that held power. It was the truth, and the voices brave enough to speak it. Marcus whispered one last time to the tombstones around him. Marcus soft, resolute, rest easy. The watch is kept. Then he turned and walked out of the cemetery. The night air cooled against his face, the storm finally behind him.